2022 Public Works Committee meeting. Now is time for roll call and determination of quorum.
Lehman. Evans.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Ham. Stroman. A quorum is present.
Thank you. And now is time for adoption of the agenda. Have a motion by Councilman Lehman, a second by Councilman Stroman. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Now is time for general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the committee on any issue not limited to items on the agenda. Action will not be taken at the meeting on any issue not on the agenda, except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. So I will open general public comment, and we have one speaker request. You'll give us your name.
William Evans. I'm a resident of the Rapid City Council.
Thank you, Bill.
That's my address. I never leave. Anyhow, I just wanted to invite everybody to a recital on Sunday. Aya Buchanan, Prima Abraham, the head of the eye clinic's daughter, who's been going all over the world and winning competitions, a product of our string program here in Rapid City, is going to be playing recital. She's a senior at the Curtis Institute of Music this year. She's been soloing with orchestras as big as Milwaukee, Albany, New York, Mumbai, India, believe it or not. This is a girl that's destined for greatness in terms of her career. Now, the only reason I'm doing this here, I don't necessarily think everything's appropriate to come before the City Council. However, people are curious about where our Arts Contingency Fund money goes. Now, the Rapid City, the Black Hills Chamber Music Society gets $1,500, $2,000 a year is all for this. She's one of the featured performers on this series that happens every year that includes string quartets, chamber orchestras, whatnot, great pianists from around the world, usually 5 or 6 concerts per year. And so I just thought it was important that the council sees where some of their money goes, even though this is a small pittance, less than 1/2 of 1/10 of 1/50th of 1% of the city budget goes to things like this. The concert is at 3 o'clock. I just wanted to let you see Maya playing. She is, well, she was in my Stevens Orchestra. We shipped her off to Chicago to finish her career at about age 13. She graduated from the Chicago Institute of Arts and won the Chicago Symphony Concerto competition. And for those who don't know, that's kind of like winning the Heisman Trophy in the world of music. And so she's really thrilled to be coming back. In fact, she's donating her entire performance fee to student tickets so that local kids can come watch her play. And then she's going to be talking to kids about what they want to do if they want to pursue a career in music. Interestingly, you know, we've had some people that have gone on to superstardom, like Adam Vinatieri. You really can go anywhere from here if you choose, and luckily we've got sporting facilities that supported his efforts. By the way, he played the cello in 4th and 5th grade orchestra at Wilson School. So, I mean, you know, we can send kids off to do great things if we support them, and this little pittance to the Arts Contingency Fund is one of those things that do it. So let's watch Maya play. Okay, she's playing right there at the Strad Society in Chicago, which is a worldwide organization. She had to perform for them because they lent her a $10 million Guarneri del Jesu violin to play on, and that's what you're hearing her play. So, our kids are doing great things. Please come support her on Sunday at 3 o'clock.
Well, yes, if Bill wants to answer a question, absolutely.
Mr. Evans, I got one of these notices of this performance also, but is that the Congregational Church?
Is that First
Thank you. If there's no other questions, I will close general public comment, and we will move on to items, consent items, items 1 through 15, and I will turn it over to our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was quite literally the toughest act to follow. I can't compare to that, so. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go through items 2 through 16, and I believe we have a presentation at the end here on item, or I'm sorry, 2 through 15, and a presentation on item 16. So with that, item number 2 is basically a long title to say that we are setting for hearing on December 5th a funding application for state revolving funds for projects out at solid waste. Black Hills Council of Local Governments will be here on the 5th to provide a presentation and conduct the public hearing. Item number 3 and 4 are items that we do annually, and that is to write off both uncollectible and credit balances on our utility accounts. Once again, this is accounting principles for our audit. This is a good business practice that we've done continuously for a number of years. Item number 5 is an agreement with a developer to construct a public sanitary sewer lift station. This will be out in the Red Rocks area or High Point Ranch. Item number 6 is a lift station. This is our Elkvale Road lift station force main project. We've had many issues with supply chain. It's a big major project. So we've had some cost issues. And this change order reflects some of those issues we've had from the time that the project was bid, and we're still waiting on parts, as I understand it, for some of the items. Item number 7 is a final change order, a decrease on the East Main Street North Bridge repair. That's over by the fairgrounds and was opened just prior to the Central States Fair, if you recall. Item number 8 is a change order to PKJ Contracting. They're currently working out at our water reclamation facility. This is value-added change. We identified some additional improvements that they could do while they were there, and instead of us having to contract those separately, we're able to include the work in this existing contract. Item number 9 is a final change order for our 2022 lane line painting contract. Decrease of just a slight amount. We budget about $100,000 a year for our lane line painting. Came in just under budget for that. Item number 10 is our utility rate study that will be kicking off around the first of the year. We do this every 5 years. The City of Rapid City has adopted financial and rate setting policies, and part of that policy includes that we conduct rate studies on a 5-year frequency, and this is the next contract to do that. There will be City Council involvement in this process, as there was the last number of times that we've done this. So be looking forward to maybe seeing some invites on this process as we get kicked off on it. Completion will probably be middle part of next year. on this study. Item number 11 is an agreement with the DOT for railroad improvements, primarily out here on Fifth Street. The South Dakota Department of Transportation worked closely with the railroad, has funding to make improvements to the railroad crossings. We are responsible for a 10% cost share on that, which is offset by in-kind work. It is anticipated that we will do about $80,000 worth of in-kind work, which includes asphalt patching up to the repairs of the track pads and also traffic control. Item number 12 is a purchase of a pickup truck for our water division. Item 13 is purchase of solid waste containers through Omnia Partners, which is a joint purchasing vendor or contract rather. And then item 14 is same thing, utilizing Omnia Partners joint purchasing contract for AVL, which stands for automated vehicle locating. We currently have a service and we have found and it's a subscription base. This is a better solution at a cheaper price that we'll be moving for, and this is for our street department. And then item 15 is a adoption of a policy for procurement. This is a Federal Transit Authority requirement that we have a procurement policy. We are currently doing everything that is in the policy just as part of our normal grant requirements through FTA. I know within the last year and a half, Megan brought forward to you a safety policy, which was a new FTA requirement. And this is just another FTA requirement that we have a procurement policy. It's not that we haven't had one, it's just now a requirement of FTA that we do have one. And with that, I'll stand for questions on items 2 through 15.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
Since you mentioned the DOT, I'd just like to comment on something that was brought up 2 weeks ago when I mentioned that Anamosa Bridge and the fact that we did receive, thank you for following up on it, whoever sent the letter off to Tom Horan, Region Operations Engineer, but we did receive word back from him that he was going to come and speak on December 1st and maybe put together a roadmap for the city to actually pursue some kind of co-optive thing. So thank you for following through on that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other questions from, go ahead.
Not a big deal. I was just curious on the recycling and garbage containers. What are we paying for each of those? Is there a line item to that I missed? Don't know yet. Okay. Just curious.
If you give me a minute, I'll drill down a little bit and see if I can find that answer. But
Yeah, no worries.
Any other questions from anyone? If not, I'll look for a motion. Have a motion to approve all the items by Councilman Evans, a second by Councilman Ham. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Now we'll move on to consent items. Item 16, I will open public comment. I don't have anyone that wants to speak on it, so I will close public comment. We'll move to item 16. This is a presentation by IMS on pavement condition index.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to introduce Sarah Auden of our engineering division. Sarah's the project manager on this project and our primary street engineer with the city, so I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is the 2021-2022 pavement condition index project for the city. So in the fall of 2021, we went out through the consultant selection process to hire a consultant to come and complete a survey of all of our existing streets, as well as move us forward and help us with a pavement management system. And so through that process, we hired infrastructure management services primarily out of Arizona. So they have had quite the weather fun today. So IMS, Infrastructure Management Services, was hired, and they are here. They have completed the data survey back this April or May. They completed the survey by driving it, and they are here now to give us a summary of what they found. I've got Kurt Kiefer here and Megan Foschi.
Thanks, Sarah. I grew up in Chicago, so this isn't that bad. So today's presentation, I'll basically go through. Oh, sure. Is this better? Better? Okay. So today's presentation, I'll go through kind of the process that we went through in evaluating the condition of the city's roadways, our findings, and then, as Sarah mentioned, our recommendations moving forward. The goals of this project were to first and foremost implement a pavement management system for the city, basically a program or some software that the city could use moving forward to better manage or more effectively, more proactively manage its pavement network, its roadway pavement network. So we implemented an Excel-based, easy-to-use system called Easy Street Analysis for the city, and uploaded into that spreadsheet all of the city's roadways and information about the roadways, including like the number of lanes, the surface type, whether it's asphalt or concrete or if it's chip sealed. That type of information was entered into the system. And we created, we worked in collaboration with the city's GIS department, with Angie over there. And you guys have an amazing, first of all, amazing GIS, which was really helped us get the project rolling on schedule and stay on schedule throughout the duration of the project. So we built this ESA spreadsheet and linked it to the city's existing GIS. And then we went out and assessed the condition of the city's roadway network. We used an industry standard that was developed by the Army Corps of Engineers back in the late 70s, but then was later adopted by the American Society for Testing and Materials, ASTM. It's ASTM D6433. It's probably the most widely used standard for assessing roadway pavement condition. It's basically a common language for municipal agencies to talk about pavement conditions and what types of recommendations or what type of maintenance or rehabilitation might be required for roadways in different, with different condition scores. What we ended up with for each segment, basically from block to block, for every roadway, we developed a pavement condition index score, a PCI score, which is based off of the types of distresses that are out there, whether or not there's longitudinal cracking, transverse cracking, patching, alligator cracking, fatigue cracking. All of that information goes into calculating the pavement condition index score. So we developed scores for every single one of the city's roadways, and then we entered that condition into the ESA software package and ran several 5-year analyses to evaluate the impact of different funding levels on the condition of the city's roadways. We took into account the city's current funding level, about $11.9 million per year, 2.5 million of which is allocated toward maintenance and rehabilitation, and the remainder of that balance is for reconstruction projects. So we determined the impact of that budget, that funding level over the next 5 years, and took into account the city's existing CIP plan. So all of those projects that the city currently has programmed, those were included in our analysis. We then ran a budget to determine, what amount of funding would be required to moderately increase the overall condition of the city's roadways, and another analysis to determine what level of funding would be required to maintain the city's existing backlog. Basically, a backlog is all of the roads that need to be reconstructed, resurfaced. Basically, roads in bad condition. Okay, they have PCI scores less than 40, or poor, very poor condition. And then we worked with the city to develop some pavement preservation and rehabilitation projects. The technology that we deployed for the data collection, I understand that the city has performed in-house windshield surveys every other year for several years. We brought out a road surface tester that's equipped with a 3D pavement imaging system. We developed a 3D model of every lane that we drove in the city's network, and we used that 3D model to determine where cracking was located, and that cracking information was then used in calculating the pavement condition index, the PCI scores for each roadway segment. In addition to cracking, we also recorded rutting values, basically how much rutting, where the wheels go, below your wheels, like if you're driving down the road, you come to an intersection, you can see ruts sometimes, and that might be a that might cause hydroplaning or things like that. Rutting is also an indicator of structural failure of a pavement. In addition to rutting, we captured the International Roughness Index. We calculated IRI values for every segment. IRI values are an indication of how much coffee you're going to spill on yourself on your way to the office, and basically how bumpy the roads are. So we captured IRI values as well during our condition assessment. Here's an example of the type of data that we collected in addition to capturing rear-facing imagery, forward-facing imagery with our array of cameras. We also captured that 3D imagery, which you can see on the right side of the screen there. That 3D imagery is of the pavement surface, and we can resolve down to 1 millimeter wide cracks from that imagery, and we have some artificial intelligence, some machine learning that can go through to detect those cracks, but it's not always 100% accurate, so all of the data that we processed for the city, we had our team of certified ASTM D6433 raters. We have 9 of them go through and review the data to make sure that it was accurate before we delivered it to you. And here's just an example of what the PCI scores range from. A PCI score of 0 is a pavement that is barely a pavement anymore. Might look like some roads that go off to nowhere, or maybe some rural roads that haven't been maintained for a long time. And then a PCI value of 100 is something that was built properly immediately after construction. Nice black asphalt surface or white concrete surface. And then in between, 70 to 85, very good. And the backlog, I'd like to mention again, that's any roadway that has a PCI score below 40. So roadways in poor and very poor condition, those are candidates for reconstruction or resurfacing. And roadways in that good to very good, excellent condition, those are all candidates for preventive maintenance. Kind of like changing the oil in your car. Those are the roads that you want to preserve in good condition and spend some money on those with some crack sealing programs, which you guys are currently doing, which is great. Generally speaking, pavement management, it's not rocket science. However, there is one thing to keep in mind. It's cheaper to keep roads in good condition than to let them fail and have to reconstruct them later on. So those roads that you guys have that are in good, very good, and excellent condition, all of the crack sealing, surface treatments that you're applying to those help extend the life of those pavements before they fail. And really what happens up here is if you get cracking in the road surface and then you get moisture, rain come in, and then it freezes, like we have going on outside today, in the base of the pavement and the soil below the pavement, that water, when it freezes, unlike any other liquid known to man, it expands rather than contracts. So when you have freeze-thaw damage, it's because water is expanding in the pavement structure, tearing the pavement apart, and then relaxing. So what we're trying to do is keep moisture out of the pavement base and subgrade. So all that preventive maintenance is an effort to make sure that that surface of the pavement is as waterproof as possible. But once you do get water in there, especially in this climate in the Dakotas, up north, the freeze-thaw cycles can rapidly deteriorate that pavement. So the time that you have between when that cracking occurs to when that roadway might be failed is shortened. It's abbreviated up here. Unlike down in Texas, I'm currently living in Austin, and my colleague Megan is from Auburn, Alabama. We don't have that freeze-thaw as much as you guys have up here, so we get a little bit more leniency when we're applying that preventive maintenance. But up here, you guys want to be aggressive with that. And again, this graph just shows how the application of routine preventive maintenance can help extend the overall life of a pavement structure. Here we have a few examples. We've got North Street, which is in excellent condition. I think, Sarah, this was rehabilitated 3 years ago? Yeah, 3 years ago. PCI of 99. You guys, you do excellent work on the roadways that have been reconstructed up here. They're absolutely beautiful. The concrete work is great. And your departments are doing preventive maintenance, crack sealing, joint sealing, getting way ahead of the curve. And kudos, not every agency does that, but the city's doing a really good job keeping up on this. I encourage you guys to keep doing that and keep funding that. But a roadway like this can last a long time before any significant repair needs to be done. Here we have East Mead Street. This one's in very good shape. It's not terrible. PCI of 77. Some transverse cracking on this asphalt roadway. You know, recommendation here would be go out and seal those cracks. Basically get out there, put down some crack sealing, keep the moisture out of the base, keep that road in good condition. Then we have Haley Avenue. Good condition, 61. This is one that's kind of, you can see that there's been preventive maintenance done out there. We have longitudinal cracks sealed. We have some edge cracking that's cropping in on from the curb line. That type of road, keep doing the preventive maintenance. Eventually, you'd probably be able to extend the life of this pavement a little bit longer by just doing some additional crack sealing and localized patching, maybe microsurfacing and some type of slurry seal. Here we've got a concrete road. This is North 5th Street, PCI 53. Concrete's difficult because you're typically looking at failures of panels or slabs, and pavement condition can often be localized on concrete streets. So you might see a score of 53, half of that concrete road might be fine, and then you have some localized failures that might bring that segment of the roadway down to a 53. So concrete requires, more of an engineering analysis to determine exactly what the proper rehabilitation activity is here. But from what I'm seeing here, probably some patching, maybe a slab replacement or two. And then we have Franklin Street, PCI of 42, marginal condition. Again, this road is starting to show more significant edge cracking, longitudinal transverse cracking, as well as alligator cracking. This is definitely a candidate for some localized patching and maybe a mill and overlay, okay? Depending on whether or not it's been milled and overlaid in the past, you can't keep milling and overlaying indefinitely. Eventually, you're going to have to reconstruct these roads because even with a mill and overlay, the base and all the damage that's done to the soil below the asphalt surface is still there, cumulative damage, and you're going to shorten up the life of those overlays. And then here we have one, this is Ivy Avenue, PCI of 35, shattered slabs all over the place. This is a tough one because concrete's so expensive to replace, but with this amount of damage, you'd want to go out there and start replacing some slabs. And determine whether or not it makes sense to replace a percentage of the slabs or just to redo the whole road together. And then we have Mount Vista Drive, PCI of 24, very poor, lots of alligator cracking. This again is probably a really good example of full reconstruction. And is this one on the city's plan? I think so, I'm not sure. This one's currently being evaluated, being studied as a potential project. So those are a few examples. The punchline, though, is what everybody's in anticipation of finding out. What's the city's score overall? PCI average we found to be 66, okay? That's above average based off of our experience for agencies in the region. It's a testament to the quality work that you guys are doing here and the funding that you've allocated to your roadway network. $12 million is not a small amount of money, and the work that you've been doing it shows in your scores. That distribution of condition is really a positive distribution. You can see you have more roads in excellent, very good condition. That backlog, though, you're at about 13% right now. You want to get rid of that backlog as fast as you can because that backlog is more expensive. The longer, it just gets more and more expensive over time. We're seeing cost increases with inflation. All types of material construction costs are going up, so it's going to be cheaper to fix that now than to wait and kick it down the road, so to speak. The analyses that we ran are shown here, and I'd just like to point out that with the city's current funding level, at a PCI score or average condition around 66, over the next 5 years with the current funding level, we're probably looking at a decrease down to a 62 and a backlog increase from 13 up to 15%. So it's a modest, not hugely significant, but it is trending in the downward direction as far as overall condition scores. If we're looking at a budget to basically control, I think, the backlog, that is the dashed purple line there. We'd be looking at a budget around 15.6 million, and that would keep the backlog at around 13%. You're not going to be seeing an increase so much in the backlog, and a PCI score around 63, which would be 3 points less than what you're looking at now. We ran several other analyses, aspirational goals. If we're targeting a 68 PCI value, a backlog of 8%, we're looking at 28 million per year. It's been shown through studies that the optimal network average PCI score to maintain your roads at the most cost-effective score possible, or most cost-effectively as possible, is right around the high 70s, just below 80. So somewhere between 75 and 80 is the optimal average network score for an agency to be at, to be ensuring that most of the dollars that you're spending are going to preventive maintenance and avoiding the more costly rehabilitation activities. Again, though, based off of our experience, a 66 is by no means anything to you know, take for granted. It's a good score given the region and the situation other agencies are in. This graph here is kind of a choose your own adventure. Depending on what network average PCI score you'd like to see, you can just kind of go over from the vertical axis, choose a score, go to that line, and then go straight down, and that will give you approximately how much funding you'll need per year in order to achieve that goal over a 5-year period. This isn't an exact science. So as costs change, as deterioration, as climate factors, freeze-thaw cycles, increased traffic. You guys are in a growth mode up here. There are new roads being added to the network, more truck traffic, heavier traffic coming through. The deterioration models that we've used to forecast future condition may shift based off of the next round of condition data that we get. We can look and see, okay, well, how fast did the roads deteriorate from 2022 to 2024, and start tightening up those models. This is the first time the city has actually had a more analytical assessment of its network, and this is really the foundation for future decision making. And then this graph here just shows you, gives you an opportunity to pick, what type of backlog you guys would be willing to live with, or if you're targeting a backlog. If you do have a backlog goal, what's the annual budget required to attain that goal? So, final remarks and recommendations. Network average PCI 66, backlog 11%, approximately $12 million per year in funding. That does, again, result in a slightly lower PCI, about a 4-point drop, backlog increasing from 11 to 15. We've looked, Megan and I did a study of several previous agencies that we've worked with, and we really do cap that backlog at about 15%. We don't want to see you guys going beyond that. Otherwise, it becomes really unsustainable. It has a way of snowballing as that gets a little bit out of control, because just trying to keep up with all the reconstruction becomes very expensive. So definitely like to see you guys keep it, at or below that 15. And then, really with all the work that you are doing with the new reconstruction, focus on the preventive maintenance activities. These are things that are often very difficult to convey to the public. If you go out and pave a road and then you're out there 2 years later crack sealing it or doing something to it, it's like, why are you doing this again? Well, the reason is you're doubling down on the investment you made. You want to preserve that investment and keep it around as long as possible. So definitely keep going on the preservation activities, and kudos to you guys for doing that, because the work you've been doing is really positive. And then, of course, update the system periodically. I realize that there aren't a lot of options, or there are limited options in terms of contractors up here, but the work that's being done for you guys, make sure that you're tracking who did the work for you, when it was done, what the anticipated return on investment was, how long you thought the work would last. For example, if you're doing a mill and overlay, who did the work, what were the conditions when the work was done, what was the PCI, meaning what was the PCI score when the work was done, and then track that over the next couple of years to see how fast that roadway is deteriorating. And you can kind of assess quality of workmanship through routine inspections of your network. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
Go ahead, Mr. Stroman.
Thank you, Chair. So if we're at a 66 PCI, that's right, is that supposedly acceptable? Is that average?
It's a little bit above average based off the agencies that I've worked with over the years in this region. Typically, we're looking low 60s, low to mid 60s. You guys are a little bit above average from what we've seen. Yeah.
And then another question: did you have any compilation of a median as to how many miles or how many streets are above that and how many are below it? Or
we can get you that number percentage-wise. I don't know off the top of my head. There are 389 total centerline miles that the city maintains. I believe that's correct. Yeah. And so actually the distribution, I think we're showing it up there by percentages. Let me see if I can do a quick calculation. Watch me mess this up. But we've got 22. Now, our categories are by 60 to 70. I can't do a straight. You've got over, let's put it this way, you've probably got over 45, 46, over 55%, I would say, over I'd say over 50% are in above a 66.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Evans?
I guess we should be congratulating Mr. Tech and his people on doing a pretty good job with not a huge budget. So thank you for doing that. And I'm just curious, obviously, as we go further east, comparable cities, say Fargo, Grand Forks, and when we go west, we get different results.
Yep.
Is that, does that kind of explain us being slightly above average and the cities to the east become rougher and the cities to the west, or Fort Collins, for instance, which we like to compare ourselves to, similar climate a little bit, ends up with a little higher score?
Oh, it's funny. Fort Collins is a client, and I have a call at 2:00 p.m. with Fargo today. So
Well, then you can tell us what you find out,
Yeah.
like a spy.
I will get back to you on Fargo. Fort Collins has a PCI score in the, I think it's 72, 73. Out west in California, for example, we're seeing average scores. You would think they'd be a little bit higher out there, but the earth shakes, and so they have weird pavement issues, but they're typically in the high 60s, mid to high 60s out that way. So you guys aren't far off from that. Now, my hometown of Chicago, it's a disaster. Okay, so the roads there are miserable. I mean, we're looking, we did, it's like 35 local agencies in the Chicagoland area, and I think we were averaging PCI scores in the low 60s, high 50s. It wasn't unusual to see agencies that had scores in the around 55, 57. Mature, older communities, developed communities that had just let things slide, hadn't kept up with it. So I think, yeah, it is, it's kind of where you guys are located, but I think it's also the fact that you've been building good roads. So the roads that we've seen that have been replaced out there are really well built. They seem to be performing very well, and you guys are skewed to very good and good, very good conditions. So that's a testament to the quality of the work that you're putting in up here, and it's just kind of, getting through that backlog, which is part of the city's plan already. So it's not like you guys didn't know this. Sarah and their team's got a plan, a CIP plan for the next several years that address a lot of the roads in that backlog. And so the steps that you're taking are definitely positive. I think moving forward, the goal will be to monitor the deterioration of your roads, to make sure that, what we're saying up here, I mean, it looks very, very, and I know you guys will remember this a couple years from now, what these scores were, but there is, some fuzziness in the data. And so when we measure condition, we might drive a little bit off, or the technology might evolve. When I started doing this in the late 90s, it was with 35 millimeter film. Now we've got 3D imaging. I don't know what's going to be the next thing, but it's good to track those scores and make sure that you're at least moving on an upward trajectory over the years with that. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, I'll look for a motion to have a motion to acknowledge from Councilman Lehman, a second by Councilman Evans. All in favor? Thank you. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in response to Alderman Ham's question about how much the per container costs were, it looks like for the 95-gallon containers, $64.93 a piece, and the 65-gallon containers are $59.23 a piece.
Thank you, Mr. Tech, and I'm glad we're getting these because a couple more dumps on mine at my house, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be in 2 pieces, so some of them are getting a little worn out there.
Cold weather's hard on those plastic
Oh,
containers.
absolutely. Thank you. And we have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? We're going home. Thank you.